Welcome, donut dippers and adult men named King, to Geek Salad's retro movie reviews from the Geek Salad podcast. I'm Andy.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome to Oscar month, or maybe Oscar month and a half. I don't know. If we can time it out prior to the ceremony, I would honestly love to just keep going.
Well,
Even if we go a week over, it's entirely possible we could do it.
Well, I mean, the Oscars are on the 12th, so if we've got about 6 full weeks.
Yeah, it's close. And what Mike and I are going to do is we are going to cover one Best Picture winner per decade.
Yeah.
We decided not to do anything in the 20s because it was the back end of the decade. And realistically, most of those movies be hard to discuss. I think on a review standpoint, stuff like Wings and Broadway Melody.
Hard to discuss, and probably hard to find online streaming.
Actually, they are shockingly easy to find. Wings is on Tubi.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, Broadway Melody, maybe. I honestly haven't gone back and looked. I will tell you straight up though, Tubi is a great resource for Best Picture winners. One movie that we're not going to cover this during this season is All the King's Men, and I was like, I am not familiar with that movie. It won Best Picture. Not familiar with that movie, and I watched it. I was like, oh, it's not terrible.
Does it involve Humpty Dumpty?
No.
Then what the fuck is the point?
I don't know. But tonight we are going to start with the winner for Best Picture in 1934, Frank Capra's It Happened One Night.
Which, first off, I don't get the title.
It's a weird title, mainly because it happens over the course of a couple of days, not one night.
I would say even like maybe a week.
I went through the trivia too, and I didn't really see anything that indicated why that was a title. The only thing I can think of, it was the short story that it's based on.
Yeah.
But even still, I don't know. It's kind of lost the ages. Yeah. Not that hampered from my enjoyment of this movie, which was incredible. I watched this movie about 20 years ago. I'd never seen it before, and I watched it for the first time, and I was like, this is really good. This holds up. The dialogue holds up. The way that they talk holds up really, really well. And watching it again, I was like, damn, this movie holds up.
Yeah, I watched it for the very first time yesterday, and I actually went onto YouTube, found they did an audio play, but maybe a year after a movie came out, and they brought back Colette Colbert and Clark Gable to reprise their roles in this radio play. And I listened to it on my commute today. I mean, they cut out some of the extraneous scenes, like the beginning where she's on the boat,
right?
And then they kind of streamlined it because it fits in 1 hour.
Right. Well, that's like when I did another Frank Capra movie, It's a Wonderful Life, the radio play. It is very heavily truncated down, especially, I mean, It's a Wonderful Life runs over 2 hours long. This movie's like a tidy 145.
Yeah.
Which I think worked to its favor.
Yeah.
What's interesting about... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, one thing that you definitely notice about Frank Capra movies in general, the dialogue is on point.
It is very snappy. And I'll credit a lot of that shit the way he directs movies. It's always been that way, from this movie to You Can't Take It With You, to It's a Wonderful Life. It is very snappy dialogue. The dialogue makes sense. There isn't a lot of wasted words in there. And what's interesting is that this movie kind of knows, how do I say, knows its place. But for a small movie made by, like, at the time, a Skid Row studio like Columbia.
Yeah.
Columbia was not a well-regarded studio back in the 1930s. Harry Cohen was just like, they were just like, an imposter showing up to collect the Best Picture Oscar.
I texted Andy when I was watching this, and like saw Columbia Logan. They had that dun, 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 dun,
With
dun.
a sparkler.
Yeah, and I texted him like I'm half expecting to watch a Three Stooges routine after this because
Yeah.
that's how every single one of theirs opened.
Yeah. But getting into the movie itself, what I found interesting about this movie was that Claudette Colbert's character Ellie is she's kind of unlikable, and I feel like it fits for this movie mainly because it was the height of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
So having somebody who is so rich and so pampered, that there's a point where she almost she immediately snaps out of it when she realizes that she's in love with Peter, but
yeah.
But she's very like she doesn't know how to dip her donut properly. She doesn't know the whole thing when she goes into town.
Oh yeah,
she goes into town and the bus leaves without her.
Yeah. Don't worry. They'll wait. Well, wait. You'll wait for me, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And she comes out like 20 minutes later, and the bus is gone.
Yeah. And I feel like Clark Gable is so perfectly casted this because he is just the way he talks made him such a not only a man's man, but also just he can be a wise ass, and he did a lot of fighting with just his words. There's that great scene on the bus where
I'm going to go all the way back to the very first time you see Clark Gable in that phone booth talking to his editor, and just he's like half drunk, like kind of rambling, and he's just yelling at him.
But he's got like this throng of fans that are just going to follow him.
And after that editor hangs up on him, he's like, "Yeah, well, I didn't want your stupid job anyway."
Yeah. It works so well that fight with the bus driver. Oh yeah, well you are certainly delving into a battle of wits here, aren't we? Oh yeah.
You're gonna have to give me something more, else this is never gonna go anywhere.
It's funny how modern sounding the dialogue was. There's like just the way that Ellie kind of handled when Peter's trying to show her the ways of hitchhiking.
Oh, that's probably my favorite scene.
I think that's my favorite scene. It's the most popular scene in the entire movie for two reasons. One, the hitchhiking, just the different types of thumb action that you can do. The fact that Ellie, Claudette Colbert, showed a leg, which, according to the trivia, she had a lot of problems with.
Yeah, she didn't.
And Frank Capra's like, you were naked in sign of the cross.
Yeah, apparently she didn't. She really did not want to do this. So Capra's like, all right, we got a stunt leg over here. And she's like, that's not my leg. I'm doing it. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, reading the trivia, how much she did not want to do this movie. And even like Clark Gable showed up after, because this is the studio. They're on loan from other both of them are on loan from other studios. And he showed up piss drunk. And he's like, I'm not gonna do your damn movie. And Capra talked to him about it, told him about the character. He sobered up immediately. So
yeah, Capra seems like the kind of guy that if he could get you to want to do something for him.
He definitely was the first person who really had a loyalty, like a respect and loyalty from his actors in a way that I feel like W.D. Griffith and Cecil B. DeMille did not have at that time. I mean, naming some of the bigger directors of the era.
Ironically, that radio play that I listened to on my commute today, hosted by Cecil B. DeMille.
Oh, jeez.
He
killed more men than Cecil B. DeMille.
Yeah, because it was the Lux soap powder.
Man.
Hollywood radio play, and yes, Cecil B. DeMille was like the host of it.
Brought to you by Old Black Mammy's Molasses. Damn it! Damn you, depression.
I mean, kind of going back to your thing about Ellie being unlikable. Maybe it's just like the modern sensibilities, but that whole opening scene on the boat, I was kind of in her corner.
I was too,
and because I wasn't quite sure like how, because they really didn't give you much of her character yet. So when the father slapped him, like dude, what? I'm totally on board for her about jumping ship.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that is just because she's never had to function on her own. So
Right.
being out on her own, and we see this. I mean, it's become a trope now. So it's nice to see kind of where we can see it when it's still a fresh trope.
Yeah, it's like I'm sure that they've done like there were tropes in this movie that had been done before, but you watching it's like, oh yeah, okay, and you got to remember, oh wait, no, this is kind of where those tropes started.
Yes, exactly. But just the there's a really nice chemistry between them.
Yeah,
and it works out really well where they could have played it out where they hate each other, they love each other,
yeah,
and you can see that as they're going. Even very. We're not even halfway through the movie when we get to the scene in like the little motor inn
yeah.
that they were staying in, where he served her breakfast.
Yeah, that auto lodge, like after like when he like kind of lays all his cards on the table, it's like, you either give me a one-on-one
Yep, you
interview,
give me the exclusive,
and I'll get you to New York to be with King Wesley. I don't get that name, but whatever.
King, yeah, like
or you say no, and I call you father right now. Once he lays out all that,
yeah,
it seems to like just kind of takes out like, no, this is how it is, and we're just gonna have to live with it. And because after that scene, and then she goes to the stays in the line for the bathroom, but after that, she really kind of starts opening up and becoming a much more likable character.
yeah. Oh, she does. I mean, there's still some of that naivete.
Yeah.
Especially when they have to get off the bus and they have to walk the rest of the way.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, especially when the detectives show up.
Oh, that scene
the
is
auto
phenomenal.
lodge, and she just rolls with it. They're already posing as a married couple, and the fact that she's going to roll with it was great. Now, obviously, what's so cool about that too was that it didn't feel rehearsed. It didn't feel like an act.
No.
Even though it is completely an act. It's the virtue of movie making. But it didn't feel like an act at all. The fact that it worked so well.
And I'm always a fan of scenes where people are just like talking over each other, because it feels more natural to real life. When they're like talking and then talk, that feels more scripted. This whole scene, like the detectives are trying to stay in stuff. They're just talking over each other. The scene was just phenomenal.
Yeah. Absolutely. I loved it. I really loved it. So getting back to King Wesley, and I mentioned kind of at the top of the show, that was a weird thing that there were men, more than all very much likely born in the later half of the 19th century, who were named King. A big director at this time was King Vidor. I'm gonna look. I don't remember off the top of my head what he would have directed around this time, but I'm gonna pull it up.
Yeah, I mean, like when she was saying, "Oh I'm married to King Wesley," I'm like, wait, so is she a princess? Is she?
Yeah, no, that's actually his name, King Wesley.
Yeah, I didn't get that until like maybe like half an hour into the movie.
Yeah.
Like, oh wait, they're just talking about him like, is that his name? The hell? Really?
Yeah, seriously. I'm just taking a look here. Yeah, there's a lot. He did a lot of stuff. He directed the 1956 War and Peace.
Okay.
I'm looking at any other thing here that King Vidor had directed. Oh Christ, he directed The Fountainhead in 1949.
Huh? Don't know that one.
The Fountainhead is based on Ayn Rand's novel about an architect who is the greatest architect ever, and nobody can appreciate his genius. He was the director, uncredited, for the Kansas scenes in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, we're going off on a tangent about a guy who just happens to share a name with a character. He directed The Champ in 1931, which was Wallace Beery won an Oscar for Best Actor in that one, and just did a whole bunch of other stuff. He'd been directing there's the 19 teens he was directing. So,
Oh, actually, speaking of Best Picture,
yeah.
This was the very first movie to win all 5 the big guys.
Can you name the other 2?
Silence of the Lambs
Mm-hmm.
and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
There you go. Good job. And it's been 30 years. It's been over 30 years and it hasn't happened since.
Yeah.
So,
but this was the first, and yeah, like there's only been 2 others that have won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Actress.
yeah. That's kind of the big 5.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, too, because I think supporting actor... And then here's the other thing, too, which makes it unique. They were the only nominations that it got. It got 5 nominations and won all of them.
Oh, that is unique.
Yeah. I'm also taking a look, too, to see what It Happened One Night beat for the other Oscars.
Odds are good. There are movies that I have not seen.
I'm going to guarantee you haven't seen any of the movies, but I'm pulling it up real quick here. Bang. So we can keep talking while I do this because I can multitask.
All right, cool.
I just, there's just so much about this movie that is so just, it's charming.
Yeah, oh, that is a perfect word for it. This is endlessly charming. I mean, when you compare it to like some like the big like epic movies that win nowadays,
yeah,
it is much smaller. It is much lesser scope. It's not doesn't have that whole like grandiosity, but it is just so pleasant to watch.
Yeah. All right, I have it up here, and this is back before they started referring to it as Best Picture. It was Outstanding Production.
Oh,
you know. All right, so It Happened One Night versus The Barretts of Wimpole Street.
Never heard of it.
Cleopatra, speaking of Cecil B. DeMille.
Have heard of that one.
Flirtation Walk.
Never heard of that one.
The Gay Divorcee.
Never heard of that one.
Here Comes the Navy. The House of the Rothschild. Imitation of Life, which I have heard of. One Night of Love.
Nope.
The Thin Man.
That was that John Wayne?
No, that was William Powell and Myrna Loy.
Oh, right, yeah. Actually,
it's great. If you want to watch 1930s alcoholics, it's actually it's a great movie. It really is. And what I'm shocked, they've never remade. Because there was a series of Thin Man movies out. There was also Viva Villa and The White Parade. It's 1934. What do you expect? See, who are the other... So, Best Director. Oh, there's only 3 nominees for Best Director that year. It was Frank Capra, Victor Schertzinger for One Night of Love, and W.S. Van Dyke for The Thin Man.
Oh, interesting.
All right, let's see if we can send any more names here. Clark Gable beat Frank Morgan for The Affairs of Cellini, and William Powell for The Thin Man. There were very few nominees that year for that one. And then Best Actress, Claudette Colbert beat Bette Davis of Human Bondage.
Oh,
Not what you think. She was a write-in, not an official nominee. Grace Moore for The Night of Love, and Norma Shearer for The Barretts of Wimpole Street. So, interesting.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, too, is because you think about that, and based on, like, what would I assume... I've never seen the DeMille Cleopatra.
No, nor
I've only seen the Elizabeth Taylor Cleopatra. The DeMille, I mean, that had to have been epic, and many, many people probably died on the production. But thinking about, like, The Thin Man actually, in terms of a cultural relevance, holds up really well. But this is the first time I'm noticing it was ever nominated for Best Picture. And it lost to an equally, if not better, movie.
Oh, shit. Actually, interestingly enough, it happened when I beat out Cleopatra, Cecil Mills Cleopatra.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who starred as Cleopatra in that?
Claudette Colbert.
Yes, it was.
That makes sense. She was big on the epics around that time. I had mentioned earlier Sign of the Cross, which was W.D. Griffith, which is really friggin' interesting to watch. It's very much it's a silent movie, and it's very much a movie of that era from the director of Birth of a Nation.
So, what are you in for with
Yay!
this one?
Yeah, but it takes place during like the during the Roman Empire and the rise of Christendom. So, but it was back before the Hays Code as well. So they could get about as violent as you could expect a 1920s movie to do. And I mentioned earlier Claudette Colbert had like a nude milk bath. You don't really see anything, but you know it's there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, even with this one, some of the humor was a little bit more risque than I was expecting from 1934.
Well, honestly, what surprised me the most was, the constant mention of the walls of Jericho. They had that the two times that they spent a night in a hotel room, with the blanket that kind of separated them. At the end, they're celebrating their honeymoon, and the only shot that you see is that blanket dropping, which essentially is just code for, hey, we just got naked.
That blanket dropped, and guess what? She's not wearing right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, hell, even what was it? The telegraph that Peter sent to her father.
Yeah.
Like the walls of Jericho are crumbling, and he just says, "Let them crumble." It's like,
yeah,
go ahead and have sex with my daughter.
The whole thing with the walls of Jericho was really it was a really cool, like, just the metaphor that they're using there. I thought it was really nice too, because that was used to get around some code stuff.
Oh yeah.
And you know what the biggest piece of trivia, like one of the biggest impactful pieces of trivia about this movie is that first hotel scene where Clark Gable's getting undressed. He said that the first take was impossible for him to do his disrobing, taking his shirt off, and then taking an undershirt off. So he opted to not to wear the undershirt. Undershirt sales plummeted after this movie came out.
Actually, and then when the camera is flashes onto Ellie, when she's kind of putting on his pajamas, there's a brief moment where you could see a lot more of her shoulder than I thought you would be able to in a 1930s.
Yeah, and that's all. I mean, the Hays Code essentially was somebody watching the movie with a stopwatch. You can only kiss for so. You can only have an engaged kiss for so long. That kind of stuff. So this is a really interesting time capsule because it encapsulates the time really nicely. It's just the dialogue is just timeless.
Oh yeah.
And all in all, I had a great time watching this movie.
Yeah, I honestly, going into it, I had no idea what a movie was about. It's Frank Capra, so I thought there'd be some nice snappy dialogue and a little bit of humor. I wasn't expecting it to be as funny as it actually was.
Yeah,
there was some genuinely, and it's still funny, which you can't say about a lot of movies from 1930s.
No, it tends to be corny. And that's the other thing too with this movie is that it avoids a lot of what they would refer to later on as the Capricorn, where the sentiment is really just kind of a little more treacly. As much as I love It's Wonderful Life, it definitely falls into that range. Yeah. But it's this in and of itself being one of the 3 Best Picture winners that Frank Capra directed. I think stands up the best. It definitely plays better.
And, right at the end when her father is kind of grilling Peter, is like, "Do you love my daughter?" And then he keeps evading the question. It's like,
yeah,
no, just, do you love her? Yes, and don't hold that against me. I'm a little bit nuts myself. I was like, that's just great dialogue right there.
Yeah, I again, I really love this. Oh, another piece of trivia about this movie. I'm sure you noticed as well. They were inspired by they were inspired by the way he was eating a carrot
Oh yes.
for Bugs Bunny. That
Well, no,
whole thing of him just eating the carrot, like pretty much with the stalk
not
still
only
on
that,
it.
actually there are three connections to Bugs Bunny in this one because
Yeah,
I guess Fritz Freeling says this is one of his all-time favorite movies.
yeah,
But yeah, the way he was eating this carrot, Oscar Shapley always called Clark Gable's character Doc,
yeah.
and I get when he like when Clark was like, yeah, we're
He
gonna
was
kidnap
shaking that
her,
guy down. Yeah,
and
he
they
made
called
up
him
the
like Bugs Dooley or
Bugs.
something.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly, and that's really kind of cool too because knowing that and then going back and watching it again, you're like, wow, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, I'm really happy we watched this one again. I do love this movie.
Yeah, it is. It is a. I had no no preconceived notions before I went
Yeah,
into this one, and I came out thoroughly enjoying myself.
yeah.
It is a really fun watch.
So one thing that I because I'm gonna be guesting on Tom Green's new podcast, Perpetual Cinema,
Nice.
for he's having an Oscar talk about kind of the relevance of the Oscars. And one thing I feel like for all kind of the pros and the cons of the whole Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences award giving season, the one thing I can say that is very, very positive about it is that past Best Picture winners like this can be recognized to a point where we are talking about it 90 years late,
Yeah.
Yeah. God, just about 90 years later. Yeah.
And still really enjoying it too.
Yeah. So that's a really great bit of this. So I had a great time with this one. I know you did as well. I'm very happy we both enjoyed this one. So
Yeah, same here.
yeah. So one thing I'm going to do during this Oscar season as well is give you a little quickie capsule review of one of the Best Picture nominees for this year, instead of like backloading the last episode prior to the Oscars with it. It's not really a review because I know you haven't seen any of the Best Picture nominees. So I'm gonna start. Yes, I'm gonna actually start with one I just finished today. All Quiet on the Western Front, which
I mean,
in 1930 won Best Picture. Just quick capsule review. It is gorgeous to look at. It's horrific to look at too. It's a war movie. It's a very depressing German war movie. But I really love the technical aspects of the movie. I thought it was well acted, even though just kind of due more to necessity than anything else. I did watch it with the English dub, mainly just based on how I have to watch movies. It's much easier for me to watch it with the dub on. But it's a fantastic movie. I really liked it. I think in terms of its chances, it doesn't stand a chance on the Best Picture stage, but perhaps for foreign film because it is a German production. So I'm pushing this kind of up towards the top of what I've really enjoyed for the Oscar nominees I've watched. I'll give more as we go throughout the decades of this.
Okay.
But if you're not looking to be cheered up, if you want to watch a good movie, not necessarily something that's going to be uplifting, then I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're an Oscar nominee completist. This is one I definitely recommend that you watch.
I prefer happy endings, so I probably will not be
Oh
watching
yeah, no, and you will not get that in this movie at all.
I didn't think so. I've heard of the book.
Not one iota. Not a goddamn bit of it. So I'll come back next week with another Best Picture nominee. So far, I've seen 4 of them. It's going to get tougher and tighter as the time goes because I just don't get out to the theater anymore.
I know one movie that you definitely will not be able to see because it's only in theaters.
There's a couple. Well, yeah, I guess Fabelmans is on VOD. Tar is on VOD and on Peacock. I'm not spending any money for Peacock.
No.
Yeah, and I'm not paying money to see Avatar 2, Av2R. So, but anyway, that was our review of It's Wonderful Life. It Happened One Night. God, these Capra movies. And then next week, huh?
At Night.
At Night, yeah. So next week we are going to come back and we are going to cover Alfred Hitchcock's only Best Picture winner.
Yep.
1940s Rebecca, which should be interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I've seen some Hitchcock movies, not this one.
Never seen. It almost doesn't feel like it falls in. I mean, I haven't seen the movie in forever, and I don't think I was paying that much attention when I was watching it. So going back to watch it, I'm sure it's not going to fall into what we think of as being a Hitchcock film. But
is this one on TV as well?
Huh? This one actually is on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
Free. And not even like that free with ads. It just says free. So you should be able to just watch the whole movie.
Ooh, lovely.
I guess we'll find out. If we have to call an audible because there is no decent copy of it, then we will call the audible. But I usually start watching my movies a lot earlier than you do, so.
I see one on here. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes.
About right.
And I see another one that's 2 hours and 3 minutes. Retro color studio. Oh, looks like that's been a colorized version.
Oh yeah, fuck that. Get out of there.
I just typed in Rebecca Hitchcock and just did a search.
There we go. Awesome. So anyway, we want to know, what are your thoughts on It's Wonderful Life? Is this one you've watched? I would love to know your thoughts on this movie. It is available on Tubi. So if you want to watch it for free and just deal with some ads, which it's a small price to pay. It's a small price to pay. Watch this movie. I highly recommend this movie. But we want to know, leave a polite comment below your thoughts on It's Wonderful Life. It happened one night. Damn it.
And that's why he does the talking and I just sit and watch.
Yes, exactly. And I flip out when I make some mistakes like that a second time. Let us know your thoughts. Yes. And It Happened One Night. If you'd like to see, give this video a thumbs up and please hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. If you're just joining us because you're like, ooh, Oscars. Thank you for joining us. We do this every week, so make sure that you are subscribing not only to Geek Salad here at YouTube, but also the little podcast that Mike and I host, Geek Salad, which you can get wherever you get your podcasts. That is Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, you name it, we are there.
Speaking of which, part 2 of episode 234. 233 will be going up in a matter of maybe half an hour.
Awesome. So you've got that to look forward to. So you've got two new episodes this week because we split them. Thank you, Mike, for doing that. So you can check that out wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you want to keep up with us, follow us on social media, Geek Salad Radio, and on Twitter at Facebook at Geek Salad Podcast. We are also on Hive and Mastodon for whatever reason at Geek Salad Radio as well. So until next time, I'm Andy.
I'm Mike.
I'm going to go get a cup of coffee and dip a donut in it. Go for it.
It happened one night.
At least you got it right. Go forth and be nerdful. We'll talk to you later.